Fridrik Olafsson was born in Reykjavik, January 26, 1935. He is 89 years of age and coming up on 90 next January. He tied for first place with Victor Korchnoi at Hastings in 1955/56. He was a multiple-time Scandinavian champion. He became the first Icelandic Grandmaster when he qualified for the 1959 Candidates Tournament. He shared first place at Vikanze in 1976, and he served as FIDE president from 1978 to 1982. A lawyer by profession, Fridrik Olafsson. E4 from Bobby Fischer. And C5, we have a Sicilian defense from Olafsson. Knight F3, D6, D4, pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn. The open variation, knight F6, knight C3, pawn A6, Najdorf's variation. And then bishop E2 is Opacensky's variation. E5 hits the knight, and that knight retreats to B3. Bishop E7, and now bishop G5 is played. Queen's knight to D7, and pawn A4 here. Now Olafsson castles. The most common move is B6. It gets a thumbs up. The most common line continues with bishop C4, bishop B7, queen E2. Now castles, white castles, and queen C7. That is the most commonly played line of moves in this opening. Olafsson castling right away here, as does Bobby Fischer. H6 hits the bishop, bishop H4, now pawn B6 here, bishop C4 here, and you get pretty much a similar layout as the other line. Bishop B7. Pretty equal position, eval bar, nudging slightly in white's favor, ever so slightly. Queen E2 right here, queen C7, and as you can see, it's not much different than the line I showed, except the presence of this bishop on H4. King's rook to D1, king's rook to C8, knight to D2. Pawn G5 pushes the bishop to G3. Now knight to F8, pawn F3, and knight comes to E6. Bishop F2, inaccurate according to the bot. King H1 being called for here, which is very thematic in openings that involve a F-pawn being pushed, because you want to get your king off of this open diagonal. So King H1, quite a thematic move. Queen F1 might also be more appropriate, but King H1 needs to be played sooner or later anyway. Let's see what we get. A check mark here, but the move order is probably not all that relevant. If knight comes here, we're going to play King H1 here. I mean, the knight's coming there anyway at some point to hit the queen if it's still on E2, which is why Queen F1 might well be played right away. Bishop F2, however, invites the knight to F4 with impunity. And to my surprise, Olafsson plays King G7. Not what we were expectorating. Sure enough, knight F4 being called for here. Knight F4 hits the queen, and D5 is in the works as well, isn't it? So, for example, Queen F1, D5. We get a star. Have to take that, don't we? What about playing D5 straight away instead of knight F4? That seems like a viable move. We get a star there as well. And on knight takes D5, yeah, knight takes D5, I think. Knight takes D5, and then take that with the pawn. You don't want to take with the bishop where the remaining knight can go to F4 and hit that bishop. That's probably inaccurate. Got a check mark. That knight's coming to F4 in either case, but we do get a star with the pawn. Here's the reason I'm taking with the pawn. Just in case you're wondering, why not take with the bishop? Why is pawn better? Because now E4 is vacant, and my queen can come here. Boom. All right, bishop F2, king G7. We were expecting knight f4 to hit the queen. King h1 is now played, marked inaccurate, amazingly enough. Bishop b3 being called for here. And the point of bishop b3 is to vacate c4 for this knight, isn't it? I would imagine. Oops, let's move that back. I wonder if you can play pawn g3 and move your king to g2. Let me get a check mark there. That's the idea. All right, king h1 was played. Knight f4 is now played, hitting the queen, which comes to e3. Queen e1 felt stronger to me. The bot calling for queen f1. What about queen e1? Get a thumbs up. Queen e3 from Fischer. Pawn d5 now, and e takes d5. Bishop c5 hits the queen, punctuating the error of queen e3. And now queen e1 is played after all. And black does not want to allow us to take his bishop, so he takes ours. Bishop takes bishop, queen takes the bishop, and knight on f6 captures the pawn. Don't capture with your bishop here, right? No, it gives it a check mark. On bishop takes, obviously it's the same thing. It's just different. And we'll park our bishop on b3. He captures the pawn with the f6 knight, and Bobby not capturing that knight. I'd have been quite ready to take that knight. We don't want a knight controlling c3 here, so I prefer to capture the knight with my bishop and keep that balance. Bobby played knight to e4, knight c e4. Both knights able to move there, and that is marked inaccurate, and bishop takes is the move the bot calls for here. And then after knight takes the bishop, knight takes the knight, and bishop takes the knight, and there's nobody controlling c3 anymore. Gives them less control. Knight c e4 from Bobby Fischer, pawn f5 hitting that knight, knight g3 hitting that pawn. And he's also glaring menacingly at h5, which is presently defended, but you'll note either of these moves does give check to the king on g7. So Olafsson defending the pawn. I would much rather, and the bot agrees, notice here again, king g6. I would much rather have played the king g6 because you're not using your rook to defend the pawn, you're using your king. And you get the king in a better place, more toward the center, more of an attacking posture. All right, Olafsson with rook f8. Bobby with bishop b3, marked inaccurate. Yeah, I'd still prefer to get rid of it. It's calling for bishop d3 here, but I would much rather still go ahead and get rid of this knight. Remember, knight's favorite places in the entire universe are the center of the board. The center of the board will yield a sure reward. So move your pieces toward the center of the board, because it is from there you can move anywhere. So move your pieces toward the center of the board. So I'd rather get rid of that knight from the center of the board, although in this example, he could always come back and put another knight there. But if he does, I'll chase him away with my pawn. So right here, he takes with the bishop, and I open up the file. Or if he takes with the knight, I force him away from his favorite place in the universe. Bobby played bishop b3 here. Queen's rook to e8, and queen's knight to f1. a5 being called for by the bot. Okay. Yeah, the point of a5 is to diminish control of c5. That makes some sense, doesn't it? Play to a5, and if he takes, then c5 is underdefended, or if he doesn't take, then we take him, or if he pushes, then c5 is still underdefended. Here, h5 was played. We still like king g6, getting the king off of this square that is susceptible to a check from this knight at the right moment. Well, here's a wonderful move. Knight takes the pawn. This knight is overworked. This is glorious. The knight is overworked. It cannot both defend this knight and capture this knight. And note that the knight on d5 is underdefended. And as you know, The only difference between an under-defended piece and an undefended piece is that they're in the middle. Oh, yeah. For that reason, Olafsson does not play knight takes knight. He plays king to g6 here. Note, on knight takes knight, he is losing this knight because we have two attackers. He only has one defender. Overpower! That's right, ladles and jelly spoons. Bishop takes the knight, bishop takes the bishop, and rook takes the bishop if knight takes knight were to have been played. For that reason, king g6 was played instead, and knight takes knight comes with check. You know, what does it say? It says that's best. Okay, I was wondering about bringing this knight to g3 first, because the knight on f4 is still just as overworked, and the king now can't take because I'm defending. I get a thumbs up for that. Knight takes knight check gets the star. Knight takes knight, and now knight g3 is played. a5 is another move here again, just like before. The bot calling for knight e3, but here again is a place where a5 would be available to diminish control of the c5 square. It does only get a check mark, but since the bot brought it up earlier, I thought of it here as well. The bot calling for knight e3. Move that knight off the first rank, but bring it closer to the center of the board. The center of the board will yield a sure reward, so move your pieces toward the center of the board, because it is from there you can move anywhere. So move your pieces toward the center of the board. That's right, ladles and jelly spoons. G4 was played here, getting a big red X. E4 being played. I guess it's not really so much that G4 is bad, but that E4 is so much better, is what I'm gathering here. So after pawn takes E4, the rook takes the E4. Double exclam! Knight takes. The reason we want to take with the rook and not the bishop is because you want this pressure here. Two attackers on that pawn, and that pawn is gone. In case you were wondering why take with the rook and not the bishop. Back. G4 seems to have the same basic point, except that you can't take with the rook if I capture. So G4, big red X. So we had knight G3 got a question mark. G4 gets a big red X. Knight E2, big red X. And we are in the 30s of moves. This is move 31, which means they're coming toward the end of the clock. And oftentimes in the 30s, these Grandmaster games get derogatory marks from the bot. Well, knight takes G2 is no exception. It gets a big red X. King takes the knight. And boy, if only we had time to interpose with our bishop. We don't. Note that obviously, I hope it's obvious, that you don't want to play queen takes here. Why? Pin it and win it. King takes the knight was played. What's the bot calling for? Bishop d5 first. Ah, interesting. Play bishop d5 here. Interesting. All right, well, pawn takes f3 check, king f1, and you probably can go to g1 as well. Just don't go to h1. King g1 remains equal. For some reason, it's not coming up with a star, but you can see here it says king g1 is best. He'll take the knight. I'll play queen g3 check, king h7. And I'll play queen h4 check, and I'm going to get a repetition here, I think. Because king g7, queen g5. Yep. That's a repetition. That is a repetition. Don't fool yourself into believing that you can get a ladder checkmate here. That will not work. Take the repetition. If you try for a ladder checkmate, black has what refutation here? Queen c5 check. And then you'll have to block with your queen. Rook g8 comes over. Double exclam. It gets a double exclam because I take it with my bishop, right? But he's got another rook that can take its place. And I have to go to f2. The rook can come to g2, defended by the bishop. That's another check, forcing king e1. The queen can come to b4. That's another check. I interpose. Queen h4, check. And white has to give up his queen because king d2 allows checkmate. King d2, he promotes and checkmates you. Note that the promotion is a double check, so you can't take the queen, right? So you have to give up your queen. Let's put the checkmate up on the board. This is a double check, and the new queen's defended by the old one. So that forces here, and then I take that queen with check, and then you come here, and then I play queen e4. Checkmate, baby. It's a magic square in the middle of the board. Remember, a rook forms an artificial edge of the board. That's as if the king is on the edge of the board, and therefore that's a magic square, and that's a magic square checkmate. All right, back. For that reason, don't be fooled into believing that you have a ladder checkmate. You do not. Just take the repetition. Just go back and forth until 3 repetitions are played and claim the draw. Let's keep going back. King f1. Pawn e4. That is a mistake. Pawn takes knight is essential. That comes with check, and you take that, and now not e4, but f4. Boom. And the board is dead equal here. Back. Pawn e4, Bobby with queen h4, double exclam for Bobby Fischer. And do you see that there's nearly a checkmate threat right here? We've got all these squares under control. Oops, well, that one too. And the idea is going to be to bring my knight here for checkmate, except we have to deal with the queen first. The queen covers. So he played f4 here to prevent that. Let's blunder for black and show the checkmate idea, shall we? Let's just do a blunder that allows rook d7, and the point now is the queen cannot take without allowing knight f4 check. King must go to g7. That allows queen g5 check. King must go to h7 or h8. Doesn't matter. It's the same thing. It's just different. Bot calling for mate in 3 there. And queen g6, defended by the knight, forces the king into the corner. Now queen h6 forces his queen to interpose because my bishop is controlling g8. And now knight to g6 is safe because the queen is pinned. Checkmate. Nice looking checkmate right there. Gorgeous checkmate. All right, for that reason, this queen h4 gets the double exclam because it's quite an in-depth checkmate threat, isn't it? He had to see that with his eyeballs. Pawn f4 prevents knight to f4. Queen g4 check, king h6, rook d7 here anyway now, defended by the queen in this instance. Pawn takes the knight, gives check, king e1, queen c5, marked as a mistake. Apparently, the only way to keep fighting is to give up your queen for the rook. Huh, wow. Let's go bishop c8, hits the queen at least. But, I mean, this is, you might still be in the game, but look at the eval bar. We're clearly winning here. I don't think we even need to prove anything more. Let's go back. Queen c5, however, is, according to the eval bar, m27, but according to this up here, it's m14. You can see it right there. Mate in 14, so the annotator bot found a faster checkmate than the eval bar does. Queen g7 check is played. So, right, here's the type of move we rank amateurs make. We take the free bishop because it's there and it's free and we can take it, and we miss the bigger mating attack. Look at the eval bar coming back down toward the center and a big red X. So you don't want to do that. And the point is now he can interpose, and now you can't play queen g7. And he's still fighting because he's got 3 passed pawns in the center, although one can be taken immediately, but He's still fighting. I don't even think that's your best move. All right, come back. Queen G7 is the correct move. That's going to lead to checkmate. King H5, Queen H7 check. Now King G5. He plays Rook G7 check. He has to play King F6. And now Rook G6 check. Now King E5 and Queen G7 check. And he resigned because it's checkmate on the next turn, whether he interposes with the rook or plays king to F5. If he interposes with the rook, queen takes rook. It's checkmate. If he plays king F5, then rook G5 is checkmate. Bishop cuts off this square, in case you were wondering. Beautiful. Let's give you the numbers. 92.0 for Bobby Fischer, and the single game rating, 2,800.